Ain't nobody here yet. Let's see. Somebody gonna show up. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? All right, let's see. Somebody gonna show up eventually, huh? Hey, somebody is here. Is that my wife? Oh, thank you, babe. Is that you? So, all right, it's the beginning of Friday Night Live with Standing Tall with Snow Rock. We going back, you know what I'm saying? I'm just telling a little story just to keep some time going and see if I can get some attention because we ain't had too many views lately. But you know what I'm saying, I ain't been putting out as much content, so things have been, you know what I'm saying, work has been picking up, so I've been busy. And that's what it's, go, 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 and I ain't fixing to turn down nothing but my collar. But all is well. So this was back, what I'm saying, when I was in Corcoran and I got off the bus and it was crazy because I was going to Corcoran to the shoot. And when if anybody, I'm saying, if anybody's ever been to the SHU before, the SHU stands for the Segregated Housing Unit. This is like the whole for the whole. This is the prison jail issue at the Hatchby. Your connection is unstable. Please. Okay. Let's tell my connection is unstable. Can you hear me now? Okay. So so I'm in Corcoran and I'm going there, for a shoe program. And we get off the bus and I didn't know, but apparently one of the inmates, he was in there for assaulting a female correctional officer. So now anybody that knows, what I'm saying, if you mess with an officer, then the other officers are gonna mess with you, and that's the way they get down. This, they're a gang. They have, they got their own colors, and then you got the special police, the GOON squad, and the GOON squad at Corcoran were. Look, I'm not little, but you know what I'm saying. These guys made me look like, I'm saying. I was kind of small, and I'm like, I'm saying. I'm 6'3" and I'm 235 at the time. This was pretty big. And these dudes, I'm saying, are 6'5" and 250 up. And these, I'm saying, the officers, they, I don't know, they took pride in their work because they beat the brakes off of you. We'll get to that. But I'm saying, when I got off the bus, so like I'm saying, there was an inmate who had attacked a female correctional officer at another institution. So when we pulled up at a place, when you come into a prison or when you leave the prison, you go to a place called R&R, and that's receiving and release. And that's where everybody, you have to come in and get processed in, and you go there and you get processed out. Everybody goes through R&R. This is part of the correctional institution, California Department of Corrections. So I get there, we come in on the bus, and as soon as we get there, it's like a drill. It's like, I'm saying, all drill sergeants, they just come yelling and hollering, and I'm saying, they're calling somebody's name. And I don't know who the hell they calling. Where is this? Where is this person? Where is this person? Oh, and they're calling out his number and his name really loud. And he didn't say nothing because he was a couple seats behind me, and we're all chained up. We got leg chains on, leg irons, and a chain straight across. Then we got a chain around our waist. with cuffs, and we're cuffed to that. And then you might be cuffed to another guy, and then his wrist is cuffed to your waist, and your wrist is cuffed to his waist. And we're on the bus. So they're calling this guy, and I don't know what's going on. Everybody, I'm saying, I don't know. I was kind of scared because you don't know what the hell is going on. And these big ass giant police are running up on the bus, yelling and hollering. And, I'm saying, we don't know what's going on. But they found the guy they were looking for, and they pulled him out the bus. And I'm talking about pulled him out. They didn't walk him out. They didn't let him walk out. They pulled him out the bus, dragging and bouncing off of everything. If it was a seat, a doorway, he was touching everything on the way out. And they was making sure that he sounded off when he hit it. Whatever he hit, I'm saying, you heard, and it was ugly because they finally got him to the the front of the bus, and then there's big steps to get down to get out of the bus, and he got on shackles. And then, I'm saying, they just dropped him, and he bounced off of like the second step and rolled out of the bus. And then other officers picked him up. And they picked him up and I'm saying, walked him off to, there was a little cart. And they put him on the cart and they drove him off, and that was it. And we didn't see him no more. I don't know what happened to him, And we was, look, everybody was in shock, like, damn, what the hell happened? What the hell happened? But then, once we heard, oh man, I'm saying, that dude, he attacked a female correctional officer at another prison. Ooh, I'm saying, oh, okay, I'm saying, yeah, that's gonna get some attention for that, and that's just the way it is. And so I'm, at the time I'm young, dumb, I'm saying, acting a fool. And I kind of had a chip on my shoulder. I had something to prove. I was, I'm saying, I was still trying to prove something at the time. And it got crazy because they put me in the shoe, and there was a correctional officer who was part black and part white, and he was on me more than anybody else. And it was like, I don't know, he was mad at me because I was white and I was, with the Crips, and he was mad at me, and I didn't understand, but I'm saying, he was talking shit, so I was talking shit back. And then, I'm pretty good, I'll get up under your skin. I'll talk bad about you. And I'll make you mad. I'll make you want to fight, and I grew up, we used to be basing and clowning and cracking jokes on each other. And, that was the fun part. We didn't, we wasn't trying to hurt nobody's feelings. We was just trying to, crack jokes and have fun. It was all, all in good fun. But, people's feelings get hurt because some of the best jokes are the ones that got a little bit of reality in them. And that's for me. I'm a clown. I'm a big old kid. I'll tell you in a minute. And being in Corcoran, I couldn't show none of that. I was trying to be the baddest man on the yard. I was because I was scared. I was scared. I was in prison. This was my first term. First time going to prison. And I started out, I was supposed to go to fire camp to level 1. And then I got in trouble there. And then I went to the hole, and I got in some more trouble. And then I went to level 2, got into trouble there. And then that led me to, I got caught with a weapon. So they caught me with a manufactured weapon. That gave me a shoe program. So then I got up there and I got the shoe program. I get into it with an officer. And I was running my mouth, I was talking mess about him, because he was, he was messing with me, And I can take it, but you know what I'm saying, this fool is the enemy. You got that badge on. So, uh the dude, I finally, you know what I'm saying, I got up under his skin because I kept yelling out, you know what I'm saying, take your badge and gun off and bring your bitch ass up in this cell. Take your badge and gun off and bring your bitch ass up in this cell. Take your badge and gun off and bring your bitch ass up in this cell. And then finally, he took his badge and gun off and brought his bitch ass up in that cell. And then you know what I'm saying, I ran my mouth. Now I gotta back it up, and he was bigger than me. You know what I mean? Dude, he was corn fed. He had been on the protein. He'd been taking that creatine, the protein powder, the man in the can. And I'm just young and healthy. I'm you know what I'm saying, I'm just young, I'm 22, I'm mad at the world, I'm in prison. But I'm saying, I'm trying to prove something to somebody because, my whole life I was told you ever go to prison, them white boys gonna kill you, you know. And now here I am, and I done went from level 1, which is minimum security, to level 2, which is still minimum security, to now I'm at level 3. And then, I'm saying, this is maximum security. And I'm saying, there's only one other level. Well, there's two other levels. There's level 4, and then the only level past that is level 5. People don't know, but death row is level 5. So, I mean, that's, I ain't never make it there. I don't want to go there, and I ain't, I'm saying, I ain't giving the state of California no more of my time. But that was the thing. The officer came up in the cell, so now, I'm ready to fight, but he came in there and tried to grab me and tried to wrestle. But we in a small cell, so it's metal lockers on the wall. It's the bunk, the metal bunk, you know, concrete walls. So I'm making him touch everything. I'm bouncing him off the locker, bouncing him off the bunk, bouncing him off the wall, bouncing him off. And then, what I'm saying, he's trying to wrestle with me, and I just got him in a sleeper because I was just bouncing him off of stuff. And then, what I'm saying, he moved and let me get it locked in, and I locked it in deep. And that was it. I'm choking. You know what I mean? I start locking up on him, and the dude taps out. So the cop taps out. Here I am. I'm already in prison. This is their world. If I kill him, I just seen what they did to the dude who beat up the female police. And now, what I'm saying, this, oh man, what I'm saying, he tapped. I let him go. I let him go. He got up and left up out of my cell. And then they closed my door. I'm sitting up in there. I smoked cigarettes at the time. I smoked like a broke stove. So I'm up in there huffing and puffing. But I'm a strong, young, what I'm saying, angry white boy trying to prove something in prison. And he messed with the wrong one. It wasn't, what I'm saying, it wasn't that I just knocked him out or anything like that. You know what I mean? No. But what I'm saying, he tapped out. He tapped out. Now I'm talking shit. you know. So he leaves and what I'm saying, shift change and it's over. It's done, right? You know what I'm saying? Nah. See, I told you the story about on the bus when I first got there about the guy that got into it with the female officer. Now that special crew, the Goon Squad. And these are the black patches. They got the black patches, and the Goon Squad, they ain't playing. Every time I've had, what I'm saying, run-ins with them, they come with the bullshit. You know what I mean? And I'm talking about they make your time hard because they tear through everything, just trying to, what I'm saying, find a crumb or some reason to give you some more time. And the way and when I was in prison, the way I looked at it, man, look, this is where I live. I'm not going nowhere. You are coming here, the correctional officers, you're coming here to work. This is your job. Don't make my life hard. I won't make your job hard. because there are several ways that you can, make the correctional officers' days really, really long. And I knew well, I didn't know all of them. I knew most of them. And I exercised a few of them regularly, you know? And it got to the point where, look, I don't mess with you, don't mess with me, you know? And that's the thing, most officers, most officers are there just to get their check, just to get a check so they could feed their family and have a nice lifestyle. Because from what I hear, they doing all right. I wish I could have been a correctional officer, man. But that's the thing, I'm hearing, all this craziness, and the correctional officers are sitting up in there just collecting a fat check. Man, for babysitting. Babysitting. Yeah, that's the thing. They do not work hard. And they're taking their breaks, which is all the time. I seen, okay, you got to understand, I spent over 20 years in a cage in prison, in California prison system, and I seen a lot. I had a job one time where I cleaned up the central control and the D yard and the C yard visiting on a level 4 yard. So when I was on level 4, I had graduated from janitorial maintenance because they put me in a vocation because I was young, and I already had my GED and all that. So I got into the vocation. I finished and completed the course quickly. Talked the officer into getting me a job. Now, it was funny because this officer, he told me, now he was a white officer, he was like, hey, we're a lot alike. I grew up in a black Baptist church. And I'm like, what? I ain't never seen a black church before. And he was like, what? And then he got it. But the whole point is, he's trying to relate to me for what, but there was other officers. This is one I didn't understand when he got at me, went over he was like, yeah, I'm from Philadelphia. Like, and what does that mean? But it's predominantly black and brown in Philadelphia. I didn't know. I don't. I ain't never really been. I ain't never been to the East Coast. Barely been out. I don't think I've been out of the West. I've been to Texas. But that's the thing. It's crazy because correctional officers have a lot of power. Like I said, I spent over 20 years in the California prison system. And at one point, well, on 2 occasions, I bought cell phones from correctional officers. And the one officer, he straight told me, he was like, man, I'm trying to get enough money for a boat for my next vacation. And he was serious. And he told me he got it. How do I know? I don't. But I'm just going by what he told me. The dude, he was, he was a regular CDC officer. He just tried to, trying to make ends meet. And that's the thing. I've seen a lot. There's a majority of the contraband in the correctional institutions is brought in from the correctional officers. You don't believe me? Go check the records. There's so much. There's so many examples, and it's like their union is so powerful. You can't do nothing to them. I was in level 4 one time, and the Black Patches, the GOON squad, and this was in Lancaster. This was in 1990. What was that? 1995. So 1995 in Lancaster, level 4 on the C yard. We own the yard, and there's this free staff. A free staff is a man who's not a correctional officer. He's a free staff, and he works in the prison, and he worked in the laundry. So they came and they passed out laundry. And I was, you know what I'm saying, I got into it with him because when you first get there, they supposed to give you, all brand new stuff. And you have to wait a long time before you'll be able to get new stuff again. So, I wanted my issue, and I had been reading the Title 15 because every time I get in trouble and go to the hole, the only book that they have to give you is a rule book. And I spent many a days with nothing to do in a cell, besides push-ups and some reading that rule book. So I've read it from front to back several times. But this was beneficial because later on down the line, one time it kept the correctional officers were going to give me some extra time for a rule violation I had did. And then, they violated their procedures. And that was the thing. They didn't realize that they had violated it, and I did. And so when I pointed it out in my 115 hearing, which is like your court date in prison, you go to court and they just decide whether you're guilty or innocent. And all that matters is their opinion. It doesn't, So basically, the sergeant, he told me he was going to give me, a little extra time. And I was like, well, hey, boss, what about this? And then he sat there, and then he called in a sergeant. The lieutenant was doing the 115 hearing, and a sergeant came in and brought him a Title 15, the rule book, so that they could look at it. I had already read the rule book. I know what it says, so I know they can't give me no time, no extra time. Now, I didn't pay attention to the part where they can give me administrative punishments. So the cop, the lieutenant, he told me, well, since you are an asshole about this, I can't give you any time. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give you 90 days LOP, which is loss of privileges. So I'm not gonna be able to spend as much money at the canteen as someone with privileges. That's messed up. But I don't care. I'm not getting any extra time. Then they gave me 10 days CTQ. I'm like, what the hell? CTQ is confined to quarters. So I did, 10 days in my cell, and they brought me food, and I got a shower every 72 hours, every 3 days. It was foul. And anyway, I didn't care because they couldn't give me no time. But then they gave me 40 hours of extra duty. So now, you got me slaving extra. Okay, but that's the way it is. You learn from your mistakes. And the next time I point out that they didn't do their jobs right, I'm gonna do it in a different way. But that's the thing. It was hard. It was hard learning uh, learning to become a man in prison, because that's the thing. That's where I grew up, basically. I've been in and out of some kind of incarceration since I was 9. I've been in and out of juvenile facilities. I've been to prison 3 times. The first time I went for 3 years, and then the second time I went for 12 years and 7 months, and the last time I went for 5 years and 4 months. And that's the thing. I ain't giving the state of California no more of my time. Now I'm out here living. This is the best I've ever been doing. I'm not bragging, but This is the most I ever had, the best I've ever been doing. The and that's not much, you know. But I say I have the most because all my family's healthy. I'm Grandpa Joey now. You know, I'm not that knucklehead that was stuck in a cage, mad at the world, trying to prove something to somebody that don't give a fuck. Cause that's who I used to be. Welcome to the new world. Now I got a job. Now I have a business, small business. Now I'm, you know what I'm saying, I'm a content creator. I'm a small time hustler trying to make it. But I've always been a hustler. I just converted my hustle to all legit. And this works. This is the best I've ever been doing. And no bullshit. This is the best I've ever been doing. But I've been working hard. You know, I get up at the crack of dawn. I go to work and I'm there, you know what I'm saying, 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, getting that bag. Because ain't nobody giving me nothing. I ain't, you know what I'm saying, I can't stand out on the corner and sell no, you know what I'm saying? It's that ain't never been, you know what I'm saying, my cup of tea. I had I had my share of slanging dope, but you know what I'm saying, it got to the point where, I saw all the money in the dope man's hand, the one that's supplying. So I'm trying to rob him and get to all that money quick. And that led me to, my my first prison sentence, because my first prison sentence came from an armed robbery. Ran up in a drug dealer's house and stole the drugs that he was selling out of his house, and he called the police on me. Corey, what's up, brother? Appreciate you for tapping in, man. Thank you. Man, but that's the thing, you know what I'm saying? I went up in there to rob the dope man, and the dope man told the police. I ain't never expected that. Yeah, hey, I had to put the lokes on so I could hear what I'm saying. Nah, you know what I'm saying? I'm just, you know what I'm saying? The light is bright. I got a different light. So trying some different things, trying to, you know what I'm saying, get y'all right. Long y'all can see me, we good, right? I don't know why y'all want to look at this. Look at something else. I mean, ah, you remember that. You remember that. I say most time it goes over people's head. People be forgetting. Showing your age, showing your age. Nah, you know what I'm saying? Life is good, man. Life is good, man. I was just talking about Corcoran, and you know what I'm saying? That was the worst experience I ever had in prison. I went there and the police beat the mess out of me, because after I got into it with that one officer, and then he tapped out. So I'm thinking, what I mean, it's over, that's it, it's done with. And nah, that wasn't it, because the next night, it wasn't even the next morning. It was the next night at like 3, 4 in the morning. I'm in the shoe program. My cell door starts opening up. That cell door don't open up unless you're cuffed up. My cell door starts opening up. And I don't know. I couldn't count. I thought it was like six. But you know what I'm saying, the goon squad came in, and I'm talking about these dudes is big corn fed, you know what I'm saying, I don't know where they got these dudes from, but all of them are like over 6'5". These dudes is massive. But they all, you know what I'm saying, steroided out. And they come up in there, you know what I'm saying, and they just beat on me like a drum because I didn't, you know what I'm saying, I pissed, I touched one of theirs. And that's the thing, you don't, you know what I'm saying, you learn from your mistakes, right? I learned from that one. You don't fuck with them pigs, unless you're going all the way. And them motherfuckers beat the brakes off of me. I think I passed out and they was kicking me in my nuts. I woke up the next day in my cell on the floor, still beat up. They didn't hit me in my face, my head, none of that. But they stretched me out and held me, and then somebody was just beating me from my shoulders to my feet. And I'm talking about they flipped me over because they were done with one side and then went to the other. And then, you know what I'm saying, that's when, you know what I'm saying, I remember somebody boot hitting me in the nether regions. And you know what I'm saying, the second or third one, that was it. So I passed out and woke up the next day. They were gone. So they left me there. I laid on the floor for a whole day though. I ain't never been beat like that in my life. And like I said, that was the worst beating I ever took. I was pissing blood for 2 weeks. Uh, but they didn't let me see a doctor, what no, you know what I'm saying, nah, you're gonna stay in your cell. And then after like 2 weeks, I was called into the lieutenant's office. And then the lieutenant's in there, so I'm in my boxers, I'm cuffed up. So they got my hands behind me and I'm on a chair, sitting on a chair backwards. So I'm leaning chest on the back of the chair and I'm sitting there, you know what I'm saying, in front of the desk, and it's the lieutenant. And the dude's name was F.A. Rodriguez. If anybody, you know what I'm saying, question, you know what I'm saying, my credibility, ask anybody that's been there about F.A. Rodriguez. They will tell you this was, you know what I'm saying, this dude, he was a cold piece. He was a cold piece. But yeah, so he was a lieutenant, and he put a one of those old school cassette recorders on the desk, and he said, "I heard you got into one of my officers." I'm talking to you. Can you hear me? You're not going to talk with this thing on? He turns the recorder off. He's like, "Look, I heard you got into one of my officers." I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "You didn't get into it with officer such and such." I said, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "Well, none of my officers came to pay you a visit late at night." I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." Okay, so if you see any of my officers, are you gonna have any problems? You got any issues that you want to bring up that are going to be a problem later on down the line? No, sir. Look, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry. I'll be good. I don't want no problems. Man, look, man, at that point, man, like I said, I ain't never been beat like that before. I'm still in pain in some spots. This was, you know what I'm saying, like 12 days after the fact, after the whooping, and that was a good one. But the lieutenant said, "Well, you know what? I'm gonna cut you loose. I'm gonna send you out to the level 3 yard. You gonna be okay out there?" I said, "Yeah. If you run into one of my officers, we gonna have any problems?" "No, sir." This fool cut me loose two months early on my shoe pro. I had 2 months left on my shoe program. He cut me loose early. So I go to the main line. I go to the C yard. This was a level 3 yard back then. This was before Corcoran turned to CTF or CTF, whatever they changed it to. This was back when Corcoran was, at this time in the early 90s, Corcoran was the biggest prison in California because they had two yards that were, one yard was the shoe program, and another yard, and that was the protective housing unit, which is the PHU. And then they had the RTC yard, which is the return to custody yard. And that was for people that violated their parole. They would come back to this. It was like a level 4 yard. Then they had 3 level 3 yards and 1 level 1 yard outside the gate. So at this time, Corcoran was the biggest prison in California. And I wasn't happy to be there because, Corcoran was notorious for all the violence. The officers used to set up fights, and they would set up fights between, inmates and bet on it. And that's the thing. It was a show for them. It was entertainment. We were there to entertain them. We and it got bad because at the time our lives were on the line. Because if the correctional officer didn't like the outcome, then, you know, they would just, put a bullet in somebody, and who's to say, oh, well, he had a weapon or he did this and he did that. And nah, it was some foul stuff that was going on. Some of them cops was uh was not supposed to be in those positions of power. But, no one knew at the time, and it took for a correctional officer to tell on the other correctional officers. No one else cared. Not for no inmate. And that's the sad part. I seen a movie. I think it was Alabama, the conclusion, something like that. It was a cold piece, about the corrupt prison system and the human rights violations. They just treating people any old kind of way, and they killing people. They killing people, and it was crazy because they talked about this one officer that stomped this guy to death, and then after he stomped him to death, he got a promotion. It's sad because I seen this. When I was in Corcoran, I literally heard an officer tell another inmate. He wasn't talking to me, but he was talking to one of the guys at the table with me, and he told him, "Don't have me do you like I did your homeboy." And this was, literally, like 2 weeks to a month prior to that, he was in the tower on the yard and shot an inmate, because it was a fist fight, and the officer shot the inmate and killed him, and he didn't have to die, not for a fist fight, you know. But that's the thing. I'm out here living life now. I got a job. I go to work. I come home. I'm Grandpa Joey. And this is the best life. This is the best I've ever had it. This is, I'm blessed. I got all my family's healthy. Everybody's good. Looking forward to seeing some family. Holidays coming up. So that's the thing. I'm I ain't worrying about Corker no more. When I was there, it was when I first got to Corcoran. I was scared. I couldn't let nobody see, couldn't show it. But yeah, I was scared. Being a white crip in Corcoran. And I got there in '91, and I left in '94. I paroled in 1994 from Corcoran, and I remember to this day because this I had my parole clothes sent. I had some blue Dickies, a blue and black Pendleton, a black T-shirt, some blue suede Adidas, uh, and a blue rag sent in with my dress outs. Yeah, you don't forget that. But at the time, that was what mattered to me. And now, what matters to me is, making sure rent is covered, making sure the family is taken care of. That's my job. So, my family's taken care of. I think, I think I'm blessed. I don't think I know. I've I keep going. So Corcoran, yeah, Corcoran was not a happy place. But that's the thing, there was a lot of stuff that went on, because like I said, this was my first time in a level 3 maximum security prison. And as soon as I got there, it was violence. It was they beat the mess out of the dude that hit a female officer. Here it is, right after I see this, less than a week. less than 1 week. And now I'm saying, I got into it with an officer, and then the goon squad came and beat me down. Look, that was the worst. That was the worst beat down I ever. I didn't have my ass whooped a couple times. I'm saying, that one, yeah, that's one you don't forget, and we ain't never gonna forget that one. But it's over now. You know what I mean? When you don't get another chance at this. Let's see. Can I see? Can you see me now? So yeah, I'm just trying to stay out the way. It's Friday night. So what we got going on? Anybody here? Anybody got anything? Questions? Ideas? Something you want to hear? Going once? Going twice? Well, people know that one will wiggle. All right, everybody. So check this out. Ain't nobody got no questions. I'm gonna have to cut this one short for the night. I will see y'all next Friday, 9 o'clock. Tap in.